Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to explore a topic that might surprise some of you, the hidden challenges or the dark side of helping others. Now, don't get me wrong, lending a hand, supporting those in need, and showing compassion are essential qualities. But there's another side we don't often talk about, and it's critical to understand if we want to truly make a positive impact. First, let's talk about the difference between intention and impact. We may have the best intentions when we step in to help someone, but good intentions don't always translate into positive outcomes. Sometimes we end up doing more harm than good without even realizing it. It happens when we take over, when we decide we know what's best for someone without really understanding their needs or circumstances. Helping becomes harmful when it takes away another person's ability to solve their own problems. Now, there's also the risk of falling into the self-sacrifice trap. Many of us feel a deep sense of responsibility to help everyone around us, even at our own expense. We keep giving and giving, but what happens when we give so much that there's nothing left for ourselves? We get drained physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's not selfish to take care of yourself, it's necessary. When we constantly sacrifice our own well-being, we're setting ourselves up for burnout, and that helps no one. Then there's a fine line between enabling and empowering. Sometimes when we help too much, we unintentionally create dependency. Instead of giving people the tools to solve their problems, we solve the problems. We solve the problems for them. We strip away their chance to grow, to face challenges, and to become stronger. Empowerment comes when we help others build their own capacity, not when we do everything for them. Let's not forget the emotional toll that can come with always being the person others rely on. You might find yourself carrying not only your own struggles, but the weight of others' burdens as well. This can strain your mental health and even your relationships. The more we take on, the less we're able to offer, because eventually we run out of emotional energy. There's also the uncomfortable truth about hidden motivations. Sometimes the act of helping others isn't entirely selfless. It can be a way to avoid dealing with our own issues. Or perhaps we're seeking validation, hoping that if we help enough, we'll finally feel worthy or loved. While there's nothing wrong with finding joy in helping others, it's important to ask ourselves why we're doing it. Are we truly serving others, or are we trying to fill a void within ourselves? So how do we strike a balance? The answer lies in boundaries. We have to know when to step in and when to step back. We need to ask ourselves, am I helping because it's truly needed, or am I stepping in to avoid an uncomfortable feeling or situation? Am I empowering this person, or am I enabling a cycle of dependency? Ladies and gentlemen, helping others is one of the most beautiful aspects of humanity, but it has to be done wisely. By setting boundaries, understanding our motivations, and ensuring we empower rather than enable, we can make sure our help truly helps and doesn't come with unintended consequences. When we think about helping others, the assumption is that as long as our intentions are good, the outcome will naturally be positive. After all, if we're acting from a place of kindness and generosity, how could it possibly lead to harm? But the truth is, good intentions do not always guarantee good outcomes. The difference between what we intend to happen and the actual impact of our actions can be vast. This disconnect between intention and impact is crucial to recognize, especially when it comes to helping others. Many times our instinct to help comes from a place of wanting to ease someone's pain, solve their problem, or improve their situation. These are noble motives, but without fully understanding the person's needs, desires, or circumstances, we can sometimes impose our solutions onto them. In our rush to help, we might assume we know what's best, failing to consider that what works for us might not work for them. Helping then becomes a form of control, albeit well-meaning, and we risk taking away the autonomy and self-determination of the very person we are trying to support. For instance, imagine a scenario where someone close to you is struggling with a financial issue. Your immediate instinct might be to offer money or pay off a debt for them. While this seems like a simple and generous solution, it may not address the underlying problem. What if the person has long-term budgeting issues or is in need of financial literacy rather than a temporary fix? By stepping in with your own solution, you may prevent them from learning the skills necessary to manage their finances in the future. The help, while well-intentioned, ends up being a short-term band-aid that doesn't solve the root issue and might even perpetuate a cycle of dependency. The problem is that sometimes when we help, we unintentionally place ourselves in a position of power over others. We become the rescuer and they become the rescued. This dynamic can subtly communicate that they are incapable of solving their own problems, which can undermine their confidence and self-esteem. Instead of empowering them to find their own solutions, we risk creating a sense of helplessness in our desire to make things better. We may actually strip away the opportunity for growth and self-reliance. Helping without understanding the full context of a situation can lead to consequences that we never anticipated. For example, offering unsolicited advice or assistance in sensitive matters, such as relationships or personal decisions, can sometimes backfire. While we may think we are being supportive, we could unknowingly create tension or misunderstandings, especially if the person we're trying to help doesn't feel heard or respected in their own choices. The help that was meant to foster connection can instead create distance, resentment, or even conflict. Another layer to this issue is cultural or social context. What may seem like help to you could be perceived very differently by someone from another background or with different values. Offering assistance without taking these factors into account can lead to unintended harm. Imagine offering advice on parenting, health, or work to someone whose culture or personal beliefs differ from yours. Even if your advice comes from a place of care, without understanding their unique circumstances or worldview, you might come across as dismissive or disrespectful, even if that's the farthest thing from your intention. The key to avoiding these pitfalls is mindfulness and empathy. Before rushing to help, it's important to pause and ask questions. What does this person actually need? Have I taken the time to listen and understand their perspective? Is my help empowering, or is it taking away their chance to learn and grow? By reflecting on these questions, we can ensure that our help aligns with the other person's needs rather than imposing our own solutions. Listening is often one of the most powerful forms of support we can offer. Sometimes people don't need immediate solutions. They need someone to validate their experience, someone who understands that their struggle is real and doesn't immediately try to fix things. Offering help in the form of active listening allows the other person to process their emotions, consider their options, and come to their own conclusions. It respects their autonomy and gives them the space to take ownership of their journey. In conclusion, helping others is a delicate balance. While our intentions are usually pure, we must always be aware that good intentions don't always guarantee positive outcomes. Being mindful of the difference between what we intend and the actual impact of our actions helps us avoid unintentionally causing harm. By listening, asking questions, and ensuring that our help truly empowers, we can support others in a way that honors their agency and promotes genuine growth. Helping others can often feel like a calling, a moral duty that we fulfill without thinking twice. We see people in need, and our instinct is to jump in, to do whatever we can to ease their burden. But in the process of consistently putting others first, we risk falling into what's called the self-sacrifice trap. This happens when we give so much of ourselves to others that we end up neglecting our own needs. While helping others is important, we cannot ignore the very real consequences that come with constantly sacrificing our own well-being in the process. Self-sacrifice, when done repeatedly, can lead to burnout. Imagine you're constantly giving your time, energy, and emotional resources to those around you, whether it's family, friends, or coworkers. Each time someone needs help, you prioritize their needs over your own. At first, it may feel good to be the go-to person, the one who always steps up. But over time, the demands begin to pile up. You start feeling drained, exhausted even, yet you continue to push through because you don't want to let anyone down. The problem is, the more you give without taking care of yourself, the more depleted you become. This depletion can manifest in various ways. Physically, you might start to feel constantly tired, experience frequent headaches, or notice a general lack of energy. Mentally and emotionally, the effects can be even more pronounced. You may find yourself feeling irritable, anxious, or resentful. Resentment is a key indicator that self-sacrifice has gone too far. When we give without setting boundaries, we often end up feeling unappreciated or taken for granted. The very people we aim to help might not even realize the toll it's taking on us because we've never expressed our own needs. In trying to be selfless, we can end up harboring negative emotions that damage our relationships and our own mental health. One of the most dangerous aspects of the self-sacrifice trap is that it's often self-imposed. Many people who fall into this pattern do so because they believe it's the right thing to do. Society, culture, and even family dynamics can reinforce the idea that putting yourself last is virtuous. But the reality is, constantly sacrificing yourself for others isn't sustainable. It's essential to recognize that your well-being is just as important as anyone else's. If you're not taking care of yourself, how can you continue to help others effectively in the long run? It's also important to recognize that by always putting others first, you may be setting an unrealistic standard for those around you. If you're constantly the person who steps in to help, people may come to expect that from you. They may not even consider that you have needs of your own, or that you might need a break, simply because you've never shown that side of yourself. Over time, this can lead to a situation where you're giving more and more, while others take it for granted or fail to reciprocate. The key to avoiding the self-sacrifice trap is understanding that taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Just as we need food, water, and rest to keep our bodies functioning, we need emotional and mental breaks to keep ourselves in balance. Setting boundaries is one of the most effective ways to prevent burnout. This means being clear about your limits and not being afraid to say no when you're feeling overwhelmed. It can be difficult at first, especially if you're used to saying yes to everyone, but in the long run, setting boundaries protects both your well-being and your relationships. Self-care is another crucial aspect of avoiding burnout. This doesn't just mean taking the occasional day off or treating yourself to something nice, although those things can help. Real self-care involves regularly checking in with yourself, acknowledging your own needs, and making sure those needs are being met. Whether it's taking time to rest, spending time on hobbies, or seeking support from others when you need it, self-care allows you to recharge so that you can continue to be there for others without depleting yourself. In addition, it's essential to remember that helping others doesn't always mean doing everything for them. Sometimes the best way to help is by allowing others to handle their own challenges while offering guidance or support from a distance. This not only protects your own energy, but also helps others learn to rely on themselves. If you're always the one stepping in, you may be depriving others of the opportunity to grow and become more independent. Helping others is a beautiful thing, but it must be done in balance. When we fall into the self-sacrifice trap, we risk losing ourselves in the process. By setting boundaries, practicing self-care, and recognizing that our own well-being is just as important as anyone else's, we can continue to help others in a way that is sustainable and healthy. There's a subtle but important difference between enabling someone and empowering them, and understanding this distinction can make all the difference when helping others. Enabling occurs when we do things for people that they could or should be doing for themselves. While our intentions might be good, enabling can create a dependency that ultimately weakens the person we are trying to help. Empowering, on the other hand, is about providing the support, tools, and guidance for others to become self-sufficient and capable. When we empower someone, we encourage them to tap into their own strength and resources, fostering growth and resilience. One of the most common ways enabling happens is when we step in to solve problems for others, especially when it's something they could manage on their own. Perhaps a friend is going through a tough time, and out of concern, we take charge, handling everything for them, from making decisions to solving their issues. While this might provide immediate relief, it doesn't allow them to develop the skills or confidence they need to navigate challenges on their own. In fact, it can send a message that they aren't capable of handling their own life, which can erode their self-esteem and independence over time. The danger of enabling is that it often starts with the best of intentions. We see someone struggling and want to make their life easier. But in the process, we might inadvertently prevent them from facing the challenges that are necessary for their personal growth. Think about how a parent might continually intervene in their child's life, solving every problem from homework assignments to conflicts with friends. While the parent might believe they are protecting their child, they are actually denying them the chance to develop problem-solving skills and resilience. The child grows up dependent on others to handle difficulties, which can carry over into adulthood, affecting their ability to manage life's inevitable challenges. In relationships, enabling can also lead to imbalance and frustration. If one partner is always rescuing the other, whether financially, emotionally, or otherwise, the relationship may become one-sided. The person who is being enabled might become overly reliant on the other, while the enabler might begin to feel overwhelmed and drained. Over time, this dynamic can breed resentment on both sides. The person being helped might feel patronized or incapable, and the helper might feel taken for granted. What started as an act of kindness can turn into a source of tension and imbalance. Empowerment, in contrast, is about offering support that encourages independence rather than dependence. It's about helping people help themselves, showing them that they are capable of solving their own problems and navigating their own lives. Empowerment requires patience and a willingness to step back, even when it's hard to watch someone struggle. It means recognizing that growth often comes through challenges, and that by doing everything for someone, we might actually be depriving them of important life lessons. One of the best ways to empower others is through guidance rather than direct intervention. Instead of solving someone's problem for them, we can offer advice, resources, or encouragement that helps them figure it out on their own. For example, if a friend is having a hard time at work, rather than stepping in to fix the situation, we might offer to listen, help them brainstorm solutions, or recommend resources that could help them navigate the situation. This approach acknowledges their ability to manage their own life while still providing support. Another important aspect of empowerment is setting clear boundaries. When we enable someone, we often do so at the expense of our own needs and well-being. We might say yes to things that leave us feeling exhausted or overwhelmed because we believe it's our duty to help. Empowerment, however, involves recognizing that we can't do everything for everyone and that it's okay to set limits. By establishing boundaries, we not only protect our own energy, but also encourage others to take responsibility for their own lives. Empowerment also involves recognizing and celebrating the strengths of others. When we enable someone, we focus on their weaknesses, stepping in because we believe they can't handle something on their own. But when we empower, we highlight their capabilities, reminding them of their own strength and resourcefulness. This shift in perspective can be incredibly powerful, as it helps others see themselves in a more positive light. Instead of feeling dependent on us, they begin to trust in their own ability to handle life's challenges. It's important to remember that empowering others doesn't mean abandoning them. It's not about refusing to help or leaving people to fend for themselves. Rather, it's about providing the right kind of help, the kind that builds them up rather than making them reliant on us. Empowerment often involves offering emotional support, being a sounding board, and providing the tools or resources someone needs to succeed. It's about encouraging independence while still being there for guidance and reassurance. In conclusion, while enabling might offer immediate relief, it often leads to dependency and a lack of personal growth. Empowering, on the other hand, fosters resilience, independence, and confidence. By understanding the difference between the two, we can help others in a way that truly benefits them in the long run, allowing them to grow into their own strength while maintaining healthy and balanced relationships. When we think about helping others, it's easy to overlook the emotional toll that can come with constantly being there for someone else. Supporting others, especially those we care deeply about, often feels natural. But it's not without its challenges. Many times, the emotional weight of helping someone can become overwhelming, particularly when we begin to absorb their struggles, pain, and anxieties as our own. This emotional drain can affect not only our mental and emotional well-being, but also our relationships and overall quality of life. At first, we might not even notice the gradual emotional toll. We want to be supportive, to offer a shoulder to cry on or provide advice when needed. But over time, the constant need to be present for others can start to weigh us down. Each time we listen to someone's struggles, each time we take on their burdens, we carry a little bit of that emotional load ourselves. Whether it's a friend going through a breakup, a family member dealing with health issues, or a colleague facing work stress, their problems start to seep into our own lives. While empathy and compassion are admirable traits, there's a limit to how much emotional baggage we can take on before it starts to affect us. One of the key challenges is that when we help others emotionally, we may not be aware of how much we're giving. Listening to someone vent or offering advice may seem like small acts, but over time, the accumulation of these interactions can leave us feeling drained. We might find ourselves thinking about other people's problems long after the conversation has ended, worrying about them even when we're supposed to be focusing on our own lives. The emotional energy we expend in these situations can be significant, even if it's not immediately obvious. This emotional drain can also manifest physically. Stress, anxiety, and emotional fatigue often show up in our bodies as headaches, tension, fatigue, or even changes in our sleeping or eating habits. Constantly taking on the emotional weight of others can lead to chronic stress, which can have a profound impact on both our physical and mental health. We may start to feel overwhelmed, unable to manage our own emotions because we spent so much time and energy managing the emotions of others. When we become the person that everyone turns to for support, we might find it difficult to set boundaries. It can feel as though we always need to be available, always ready to lend an ear or offer advice. This can lead to a cycle where we're constantly on call, never allowing ourselves the time or space to recharge. Over time, this can breed resentment. While we want to help, we may begin to feel taken for granted, as though our own emotional needs are being overlooked in favor of others. The relationships that once felt fulfilling and supportive can start to feel one-sided, where we're always the giver and never the receiver. Another layer of complexity comes from the fact that not all problems have quick solutions. When we emotionally invest in someone else's struggles, we might feel frustrated or helpless if there's no clear resolution. Watching someone we care about go through a difficult time without being able to fix things can be incredibly stressful. This sense of helplessness can compound our emotional burden, making it even harder to separate our own emotions from those of the people we're trying to support. The emotional drain of helping others can also take a toll on our personal relationships. If we're constantly emotionally exhausted from dealing with one person's issues, we might have less energy to give to other important relationships in our lives. Our patience may wear thin, and we might find ourselves more irritable or less available to our loved ones. In some cases, we might even withdraw from social interactions altogether because we're so emotionally spent that the idea of engaging with others feels overwhelming. This withdrawal can lead to isolation, further exacerbating feelings of stress and burnout. So how do we help others without falling victim to emotional exhaustion? The answer lies in setting boundaries and practicing self-care. It's important to recognize when we've reached our emotional limit and to communicate that with others. This doesn't mean we stop caring or that we're abandoning those who need us. It simply means that we acknowledge our own emotional capacity and set limits to protect our well-being. Saying no or taking a step back when necessary is not a sign of weakness or lack of compassion. It's a necessary act of self-preservation. Finding ways to replenish our emotional energy is crucial. Engaging in activities that bring us joy, seeking support from others, and taking time for ourselves can help us maintain emotional balance. We cannot pour from an empty cup, so it's essential to ensure that we are taking care of our own emotional needs before we can effectively support others. It's important to remember that while we can offer support, we are not responsible for fixing other people's problems. We can provide a listening ear, share advice, or offer a comforting presence, but ultimately each person is responsible for their own emotional well-being. By maintaining healthy emotional boundaries and taking care of ourselves, we can continue to help others without losing ourselves in the process. Helping others at its core is an act of compassion. But what we often fail to recognize is that while we may have the best intentions, we can easily fall into the trap of assuming we know what's best for the people we're trying to help. This can result in imposing our own solutions or ideas onto others without fully understanding their perspective, needs, or desires. The risk here is that we can unintentionally rob them of their autonomy, their ability to make decisions for themselves, and their sense of empowerment. Instead of helping, we may be controlling or dictating their path, which can have long-term negative consequences on their growth, confidence, and self-reliance. One of the main ways this happens is when we assume that our experiences, values, or solutions are universally applicable. For example, let's say someone close to us is facing a problem that we've encountered in the past. It's easy to believe that the way we handled it is the best way, and therefore the solution we offer is the right one. We may give advice with the expectation that they follow it, or we might step in and take action on their behalf, assuming we're doing what's best for them. However, in doing so, we may fail to consider that their situation is unique, and what worked for us may not necessarily work for them. Everyone's life circumstances, emotional makeup, and values are different. And imposing our own framework onto someone else's life can strip them of the opportunity to find their own path. This approach can unintentionally communicate that we don't trust them to handle their own challenges. Whether it's offering unsolicited advice or stepping in to solve a problem for them, we may inadvertently send the message that we don't believe in their ability to navigate their own difficulties. This can have a profound impact on their self-esteem. Over time, they might start to doubt their own judgment, relying more and more on external input rather than trusting their own instincts. Instead of fostering independence and resilience, we risk creating a dynamic where the person becomes dependent on our guidance or interventions to make decisions. This can be particularly damaging in relationships where power dynamics are already at play, such as between parents and children, mentors and mentees, or even friends and partners. When one person continually steps in to help or make decisions for the other, it can create a power imbalance that leaves the other person feeling controlled or diminished. The helper may not realize they are overstepping because their intentions are good, but the effect is the same. The other person's autonomy and sense of control over their own life is diminished. To avoid this, it's important to adopt a mindset of humility when helping others. Rather than assuming we know what's best, we should begin by really listening. Ask questions, seek to understand the other person's perspective, and resist the urge to offer solutions right away. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is provide space for the other person to express themselves and explore their own thoughts and feelings. It's through this process that they often come to their own solutions, which are likely to be far more empowering and effective than anything we might impose. We need to be mindful of the fact that people may need different kinds of help at different times. Sometimes they might be looking for advice or practical assistance, but other times they may just need emotional support or validation. Jumping in with solutions when someone simply wants to be heard can be counterproductive, as it shifts the focus away from their experience and onto our own perceptions of the situation. By asking what kind of support they need, we can avoid imposing our own ideas and ensure that the help we offer is actually beneficial to them. Empowering others means giving them the tools and support to make their own decisions rather than making decisions for them. This might involve offering resources, sharing knowledge, or being a sounding board, but ultimately leaving the responsibility for decision-making in their hands. It also means being comfortable with the fact that they might make choices we wouldn't necessarily agree with. Just because someone takes a different path than we would doesn't mean they are wrong. Trusting in their ability to navigate their own life is a crucial part of helping them grow and develop into their full potential. It's also important to remember that growth often comes from struggle. When we step in and solve someone's problems for them, we may inadvertently deny them the opportunity to learn from their challenges. While it can be difficult to watch someone we care about face difficulties, it's through those experiences that they build resilience, problem-solving skills, and confidence. By stepping back and allowing them to face challenges head-on, we give them the gift of growth rather than shielding them from it. In conclusion, helping others isn't about imposing our own solutions or controlling the outcome. It's about offering support that empowers people to take charge of their own lives, make their own decisions, and learn from their experiences. By focusing on listening, understanding, and providing the right kind of support, we can help others in a way that fosters independence and confidence rather than dependency and doubt. True help comes from respecting others' autonomy and trusting in their ability to navigate their own path, even when it looks different from our own. While helping others can be incredibly fulfilling, it's crucial to recognize that the desire to assist can sometimes lead us to neglect our own needs. There's a fine line between selflessness and self-neglect. And when we constantly prioritize the needs of others over our own, we risk compromising our mental, emotional, and even physical health. Over time, this pattern of behavior can take a serious toll on our well-being, leaving us depleted, burned out, and unable to continue offering the support we once gave so freely. Understanding the importance of balance is essential to ensuring that helping others doesn't come at the cost of our own health. One of the most common reasons people fall into this pattern of self-neglect is because they believe that helping others is always the right thing to do. Society often celebrates selflessness, especially in roles that require caregiving, like parenting, nursing, or social work. We are taught that putting others first is a noble act, and while there is certainly value in being there for those in need, it's not sustainable if we're constantly sacrificing our own needs in the process. Over time, we can become so focused on meeting the needs of others that we forget to check in with ourselves. This can lead to feelings of exhaustion, frustration, and even resentment.